Following a new law to help California workers who are trying to start a family of their own. Governor Brown's hope for the state legislature.
In this case, the West Coast distribution of precipitation, wet in the north, dry in the south, was pretty much topsy-turvy of what we expected.
Tracking the drought from the Sierra snowpack to San Diego, we'll take a closer look at the state of water in California.
Spaceflight in particular is something that no organism on the face of the earth has experienced ever in its evolutionary history. So how do you deal with that?
A small plant may be key to human life surviving on the red planet, plus the research on planet Earth that may help the next mission to Mars. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Amitha Sharma. Presidential hopefuls may be in a New York state of mind with next week's primary contest, but one GOP candidate has his focus on the Golden State today. With nearly 2 months to go until the California primary, Republican presidential hopeful Senator Ted Cruz is expected to be in San Diego this evening to speak to a group of county Republicans tonight at the Town and Country Resort. KPBS reporter Steve Walsh joins us live from Mission Valley.
That's right, Amitha. California may be in play on both sides of the aisle. In March, we saw Bernie Sanders make a stop in San Diego. Though today we have Ted Cruz making a swing through California. He'll take the stage in a while. His supporters are just starting to file in now. Earlier today, he was in Irvine. Senator Ted Cruz's swing through California is further evidence that the state's late-in-the-calendar primary may really play a role in presidential politics this year. Former San Diego and California GOP Chair Ron Nearing is the campaign's national spokesman. He says that they've been organizing in California since last year.
Time is a resource that you can't get more of. It doesn't matter how much money you have. You can't get back lost time, and the other candidates are well behind in terms of organizing in order to win the support of California.
Even so, the latest field poll shows Cruz trailing Donald Trump by 7 points in California. Tonight's rally coincides with a monthly meeting of county Republicans. The campaign expects a sold-out crowd of roughly 2,000. Nearing said California's system of awarding delegates by congressional district is designed to force candidates to campaign throughout the Golden State, which is one reason some candidates have gotten started early. Reporting from Town and Country Resort in Mission Valley, Steve Walsh with KPBS News.
Some people greeted the Cruz campaign with a protest outside of the rally venue this afternoon. A handful of voters showed up with signs questioning his credentials to be the next commander-in-chief. Bernie Sanders is still behind when it comes to delegates and votes, but he has one clear advantage over his Democratic and Republican counterparts. A lot of people actually like him. Sanders has now won 7 of the past 8 state contests after winning the Democratic caucuses in Wyoming on Saturday. He needs to take 68% of the remaining delegates and uncommitted superdelegates to win the nomination. A new AP poll shows more Americans have a favorable opinion of Sanders than those who don't. This is by a 48 to 39% margin. Pollsters say this is the best net positive rating in the field. The candidates for San Diego mayor will have a chance to make their case tomorrow. Univision and Telemundo are hosting a forum for the candidates tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Incumbent Mayor Kevin Faulconer, Lifeguard Union Chief Ed Harris, and former Assembly Speaker Lori Saldana are expected to participate. Workers in California will get a big boost in family leave benefits. Today, Governor Jerry Brown signed a bill to increase those benefits from the current 55% of salary. People earning close to minimum wage will get 70% of their normal pay when they take time off to care for new children or sick family members. Workers who earn higher amounts can get 60% of their pay. The governor says it's important for lawmakers to understand where workers with families are coming from.
We do have these two polar positions, pure market, which only knows efficiency, and then community, which knows justice and fraternity and a sense of empathy. Now, it isn't all empathy, it's not all market. It's both combined. And I would say we never quite get it right because the market has its ravages.
The measure takes effect in 2018. New evidence shows some schools are turning away children who are living in the U.S. illegally. Research from Georgetown University's Law Center shows school districts have blocked these kids from registering for school and accessing educational services. Researchers focused on 4 states in the union. According to state laws, all children, regardless of immigration status, must attend school through at least the 8th grade or until age 16. A new report blames a clear racial bias for the high number of Black and Latino drivers who were pulled over in California. Researchers say they are likely to have their driver's licenses suspended and face arrest as a result of traffic stops. The report, led by the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights of the San Francisco Bay Area, examined data from the census, the Department of Motor Vehicles, and local police agencies. The report analyzed geographic data. It found license suspension rates spike in neighborhoods with higher poverty rates and denser concentrations of Black and Latino residents. Some call it driving while intoxicated, and the consequences can be just as horrific as being behind the wheel while drunk. To drive the point home, students at San Diego Miramar College got a somber look today at what can happen when you drive and text. They got to sit in on an AT&T simulator and experience real-life consequences of driving while texting.
I got in a crash. Someone hit me. I was T-boned.
Every year, more than 200,000 individuals are either injured or die as a result of distracted driving habits. We want to make sure that that stops immediately.
De La Torre says the top distraction is smartphones. Tesla Motors is recalling 2,700 SUVs because of a seat defect. The automaker says it found the problem while testing the Model X. The SUV's third-row seat backs could snap forward in a crash. Tesla says the seats passed all American tests but failed when it was tested under stricter European standards. The recalled cars were made before March 26th. Tesla says it will replace the defective seat backs. Last year, California's snowpack hit a record low. By April 1st, it was down to just 6% of its normal level. This year was much better, and we saw a big jump in our online interactive tool, the KPBS Drought Tracker. But KPBS science reporter David Wagner says despite this year's gains, we're not back to normal just yet.
For the past few months, we've been tracking statewide rain and Sierra snow to give you a better sense of how El Niño is affecting California's drought. And we've limited our focus here to California's wettest months, which stretch from October to the beginning of April. We could still see some rain in coming weeks, but California's traditional wet season is now over. At the outset, climate experts told us that to really put a dent in the drought, we'd want to see rain and snow levels hit 150% of normal by April 1st. Unfortunately, we only really got about average precipitation in California this wet season. By April 1st, statewide rainfall topped out at 108% of normal, and the average Sierra snowpack measurement was just below normal at 91%. So, where do those numbers leave us today? Has the drought gotten any better? To find out, I came to the Scripps Institution of Oceanography and talked with the climate experts who helped us put together the KPBS Drought Tracker.
In very broad measure, I'd say we've gotten a little better.
But not so much better that we can safely go back to pre-drought water consumption levels, says Scripps climate researcher Dan Cahan. He says El Niño rains have filled some major reservoirs in Northern California, but precipitation was not evenly distributed throughout the state, leaving other areas fairly dry.
In this case, the West Coast distribution of precipitation, wet in the north, dry in the south, was pretty much topsy-turvy of what we expected.
The U.S. Drought Monitor shows that about 75% of the state is still in severe drought or worse. Cahan says continued conservation would be wise because we don't yet know what's in store for California's next wet season. This winter's strong El Niño pattern is starting to break down, and the National Weather Service's Climate Prediction Center says there's a 50% chance it could give way to a La Niña pattern by fall.
El Niño is when it's unusually warm in the tropical Pacific Ocean at the surface, and a La Niña is when it's unusually cool at the tropical Pacific surface.
David Pierce is another Scripps climate researcher.
That's the La Niña that came across in '98.
Who helped compile data for the KPBS Drought Tracker.
Typically during La Niña, storms get steered away from California more towards the Pacific Northwest. So that's not good for our water supply, basically.
If we are headed for a strong La Niña, California could be in for another year of drought.
But you can see this developing.
Pierce has seen some signs of a budding La Niña pattern, but he says it's still too soon to predict whether it will set in.
So right now, a majority of the models are showing we might go to La Niña conditions. I personally think it's pretty far out to say that with any certainty.
What we do know about the next few months is that current snow levels won't pull us out of the drought.
This is going into the fourth year of below average or way below average snowpack.
The Sierra snowpack, which provides about a third of California's total water supply, never quite got to 100% of normal this wet season. Dan Cahan says that's in part because temperatures in California were relatively high at various points this winter.
And of course that makes for rain instead of snow and tends to melt snowpack a bit earlier.
This winter wasn't quite as warm as past winters in the drought, but it was warm enough to affect snowpack growth. Cahan says this could be a preview of how global warming affects the Sierra snowpack in the future.
This is what temperatures look like in the state.
He showed me a model estimating that for every degree of Celsius in warming, California will lose about 20% of its April 1st snowpack.
By the end of the century, you can see here, in this particular example, we've lost more than half of the snowpack.
Less snowpack will mean less water stored up for spring and summer. Let us know. Cahan says climate change is going to shift our understanding of normal for this crucial water source.
It's going to be a different form of water management that we're confronted with.
So what have we learned from the KPBS Drought Tracker? We've learned that it's hard to predict how exactly El Niño will impact California. Even record El Niños don't necessarily bring record rain and snow to California. And we've learned that despite big improvements over recent years, the drought is far from over. David Wagner, KPBS News.
Video journalist Katie Shulev helped produce that story. To see the final numbers for this wet season, go to kpbs.org/drought tracker. Scattered showers and isolated thunderstorms hit San Diego over the weekend. Heather Waldman has more in tonight's KPBS weather report.
Well, it's been an unsettled couple of days along the California coast, and that rain has been oh so welcome. Still a few showers around the Southland as we go through this evening, but as we go through the next couple of days, drier air is going to take back hold, so we're going to see another break from the wet weather. Going to make it easier to get around, but we certainly want to keep this little train of showers coming along. We're running a little bit ahead of schedule for rainfall during the month of April. More good news there. Here's a look at the satellite and radar. Still plenty of clouds around the area as we go through the evening. Couple of showers, but they'll continue to fizzle out. Doesn't look like there's going to be anything heavy out there to disrupt things later on tonight. We'll still watch for a pop-up shower, maybe hear a rumble of thunder, especially up into the mountains where things could still be a little bit more unstable. Temperatures will bottom out in the mid-40s in Ramona. We'll drop to 45 degrees at Alpine, but down at the coast, we'll stay closer to 60 degrees in San Diego, around 54 in Chula Vista, 51 degrees in Oceanside. As this area of low pressure moves out, it's going to take the rain with it, and with the drier air comes more sunshine, and as a result, warmer air too. We'll take a look at those extended forecasts in just a bit. Here's how things are shaping up for the day on Tuesday. There goes our area of low pressure. That's what's brought us the rain over the last couple of days. In its wake, warmer air starts to take hold over the deserts of the southwest. Still some spotty showers or storms into the central and northern Sierra, but the mountains around LA and San Diego should be staying nice and dry. Futurecast illustrates that here by Tuesday morning. Maybe some clouds in the area, but the rain is long gone. That continues as we go through Tuesday night and into the day on Wednesday as well. So again, no travel disruptions expected once we get past the start of this week. We'll start you off here at the coast. A little warm up coming our way. It's going to be slow but sure. Temperatures will be in the 70s by the time we get to this weekend. Each afternoon should be filled with sunshine. We'll watch for those coastal clouds, especially during the morning hours. Farther inland, a little bit warmer. Temperatures in the upper 60s to low 70s over the next few days. Clouds in the morning will continue to break for sunshine, And again, it does look like the showers will stay away, at least for the near future. So take it for what it's worth. You won't need the umbrellas. You won't have to worry about any slowdowns because of Mother Nature. But a little bit more rain, always useful with the dry conditions. Plenty of sunshine for the mountains Tuesday through Saturday. Temperatures will be in the upper 50s to low 60s. A little cool down coming there for the end of the week, so be ready for that. If you're planning on going for any hikes, maybe driving through the mountains, temperatures overnight will be in the mid-30s. But again, we'll be staying precipitation free, so the roads should be looking good. Finally, in the deserts, heating up into Wednesday, high near 90 degrees. And then we cool it down a little bit for the day on Thursday. Lots of sun throughout the week. Heather Waldman, KPBS News.
A house in San Diego that served as San Diego's first AIDS hospice could soon be up for sale. The Truax house in the Bankers Hill neighborhood is owned by the city and has fallen into disrepair after years of vacancy. It was built in 1910 and opened as an AIDS hospice in 1988. Tomorrow, the city council is voting to authorize the mayor to sell the house for no less than $2.5 million. Some historical preservationists fear the house's sale could lead to its demolition. The mayor and Councilman Todd Gloria say they're working on a solution that would donate money from the sale to building an AIDS memorial nearby. It's something you don't expect at the final resting place for loved ones around the nation. A new investigation is shining a light on cemeteries that are mishandling the remains. Associated Press reporter Matthew Burgoyne explains what may be behind this disturbing trend.
Jackie Hughes longs to grieve over the death of her sister, Tawana Hillard, in simple ways. Visit her grave, lay out fresh flowers and balloons. But 3 years later, she can't. Hillard's body is missing, lost since her graveside funeral service in Galilee Memorial Garden Cemetery in 2012.
I just want to know where she is. Well, I want to be able to just go and just go visit her gravesite. Just go and talk, just see her. Just see where she at. I just need some closure to this.
The cemetery's owner, Jamar Lambert, was accused of misplacing hundreds of bodies, burying some in the same grave and crushing caskets to fit them into single plots. Lambert ultimately received 10 years probation in a plea deal, leaving behind undecipherable burial records, an ongoing investigation, and families who don't know where their loved ones are buried.
No, and I know her spirit's not at rest. I know it's not. I know it's not.
Unfortunately, Galilee is hardly an isolated case, according to an AP analysis of cemetery statutes, enforcement, and lawsuits nationwide. The federal government leaves cemetery regulation largely to the states, with rules varying across state lines. Joshua Slocum, director of the nonprofit Funeral Consumers Alliance, added, cemetery regulation is almost uniformly awful, where it exists at all.
And the industry does a lot of policing of itself.
From coast to coast, the AP found civil and criminal cases and investigations involving issues at other cemeteries. Family members and attorneys suing Galilee blame a lack of oversight for the years of wrongdoing. Tennessee law requires inspection of records every 2 years, but annual inspections of the cemetery grounds do not take place.
So I'm questioning whether those reviews should be more frequent than 2 years. It's hard to audit for fraud and illegal conduct, but that's what has been revealed here.
At Galilee, friends and family rarely get to visit loved ones. Some visited last Memorial Day, the only day state officials allowed its gates to be open to the public since February 2014. That day, Hughes tried again to find the gravesite of her sister, releasing balloons into the air that she had hoped to leave behind. Matthew Burgoyne, Associated Press.
Expansion plans at the International Space Station have gone inflatable. SpaceX delivered the world's first inflatable room for astronauts yesterday. The SpaceX Dragon cargo ship launched from Cape Canaveral Friday. Astronauts used a robot arm to capture the Dragon, orbiting 250 miles above Earth. The new room may change the way astronauts live in space. Bigelow Aerospace aims to launch a pair of inflatable space stations in just 4 years for commercial lease, and NASA envisions inflatable habitats in a couple of decades on Mars. There's another thing humans will need on their mission to Mars, a weed. Astronauts who are interested in colonizing Mars may need to understand how to grow plants in extreme climates. In tonight's SciTech Report, Science Friday producer Emily Driscoll has more on the research on Earth that may have the answers.
If we're ever going to colonize this place, or spend an extended amount of time here, or even try to survive in changing climates on our own planet, we're gonna need crackworts?
And people called it crackwort. There's lots of different common names for Arabidopsis. Essentially, it's a weed.
Plant biologists Annalisa Paul and Robert Furl at the University of Florida Gainesville Space Plants Lab grow the humble weed Arabidopsis on purpose to find clues about how plants behave in extreme conditions, such as
how do plants grow differently on orbit or on the moon or on Mars.
Spaceflight in particular, it's something that no organism on the face of the Earth has experienced ever in its evolutionary history. So how do you deal with that? We're really intrigued by what metabolic tools a plant will dip into to deal with something that it has no experience with.
Dr. Paul and Dr. Furl use glow-in-the-dark markers that show which genes are turned on when the plants are stressed. Then they strap Arabidopsis in for some unique situations, like parabolic flight, which mimics the weightlessness of space.
Parabolic flight is a very interesting and exciting thing for plants and plant biologists. Plants know when they're in a jet airplane. No, they don't know that in their brains because they don't have them, but it's recorded in their metabolism.
Plants are just exquisitely sensitive to changes in their environments. They can't go anywhere, and so they become the masters of their metabolic universe. They can respond even in the first 30 seconds of a parabolic set.
The parabolic flights also help the researchers figure out which experiments would work, or not, for astronauts in zero-G. Then, it's blast-off time. Arabidopsis seeds were placed in cassettes with nutrient gel and launched to the International Space Station. Once on board, they're placed in a growth chamber, with some cassettes receiving more light than others. Astronauts monitored the 12-day experiments before returning the aged Arabidopsis back to Earth, where Dr. Paul and Dr. Furl were waiting to analyze their growth.
You know, on Earth, we usually grow them vertically, and so we grow them on a vertical surface, and then the roots will grow pretty much straight down the surface of the plates. When you grow them in space, you think about it, there's no gravity to tell the roots which way to grow.
One idea would be that in the absence of gravity, the plant roots would simply wander around aimlessly. Another expectation might be that if light was a strong enough cue, they would simply grow in a single direction away from the light.
At first, the space plants grew down the plate, like they would on Earth, but then the Arabidopsis that were grown further from the light did something different.
At about the 5-day mark, they started to do this characteristic, what we call skewing, this kind of jog to the left.
Since the times of Darwin in the 1800s, it's been understood that this angled growth of roots, the skewing, was due to gravity.
Instead of gravity guiding its growth, Arabidopsis used light. A closer look at the proteins involved in plant behavior revealed that 480 genes underwent significant changes during spaceflight. Next, Dr. Paul and Dr. Furl will delve deeper into these changes, even growing plants in the dark. Their testing could help us become better farmers in extreme conditions on Earth and in suborbital vehicles, paving the way for taking plants to the moon and Mars.
Plants have a very key role in keeping humans alive in long-term space flight. It's simply impractical. It's very difficult. It costs too much jet fuel, too much rocket fuel, too much nuclear fuel to boost all of our food to the surface of Mars and have it be there for enough years to keep a human colony alive.
Who knows, this lowly pioneering plant could one day become an intrepid Mars explorer.
Emily Driscoll reporting. You can find more stories like this on SciTech Now, airing Sundays at 5:30 p.m. here on KPBS Television. We are very proud to congratulate one of our own tonight for winning a National Literature Award. Fronteras reporter Jean Guerrero is this year's recipient of the Penn Fusion Emerging Writers Prize, announced less than 2 hours ago in New York.
I really do believe stories can have a supernatural power, but this can be a healing power or a destructive power. So let us be cautious when we are proclaiming truth, because if I've learned anything from writing Crux, it's that truth is a never-ending search. One story is never enough.
She's being honored for her nonfiction book titled Crux. It's a cross-border memoir about her own family. The book has not been published yet. Here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. On Morning Edition, California voters could be asked this fall to approve new statewide gun restrictions, but some California cities are not waiting. That's tomorrow on KPBS Radio. And on Midday Edition, 70s music superstar Rita Coolidge joins us to talk about her memoir, Delta Lady. That's tomorrow on KPBS Radio. You can find more on tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. Have a great evening.